on to opening of meeting announcements. Are we making announcements, or we're just going to be?
They're in the written record.
Okay. So we're going to move on to our student report from Gus.
All right. It's just me tonight. Eliana went home sick this morning. Hopefully not with anything too bad. Can you hear me with the microphone? Okay. Awesome. So with temperatures cooling down and several major projects on the horizon, the Hastings High School Student Union has kicked fundraising into a new gear with these Hot Chocolate Fridays. So this past Friday was the first one. SU is running a hot chocolate stand in the lobby to raise money for sort of big upcoming projects. Some of those are the big talent show and the ski trip. There are a bunch of others that are going to be happening in the next couple months, so SU is working really hard to make sure those are possible from a financial standpoint. Winter sports have also started. We've got a couple sports that are going on, indoor track, but boys and girls basketball, wrestling, and boys swimming. They've all been hard at work preparing for their respective seasons for the past few weeks, and games are starting right now. I know track had our first meet yesterday at the Armory, a bunch of PRs all around. It was a really good day, and it looks like it's going to be a great set of seasons for all the different teams. Project Shares Thanksgiving dinner 2 Tuesdays ago was a massive success. Thank you again for moving that board meeting to accommodate for it. More than 100 students volunteered on the night of the dinner. We served over 300 guests. I feel like it was really a testament to Hastings' resilience post-pandemic and a show of our community's commitment to service. It's a really, really special night. Early college decisions are beginning to arrive. We've already had a couple seniors who know where they're going. Yeah, people who've already applied early. I know like Tulane, we had I think 3 people are going there. It's awesome. And those decisions, especially for people that are applying early, are going to be coming out in the next few weeks. So there's a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety. Luckily, we have an awesome guidance department whose doors are almost always open. So seniors are lucky enough to be able to go in there and chat with their counselors. I know people who just like go in there to vent. It's an awesome resource. This year's first edition of The Buzzer also came out just before Thanksgiving. Student journalists examined a broad range of topics. I was really impressed just reading through it. From freshmen all the way up to seniors, there were some really, really interesting articles. There's sort of a range from staples and sort of an analysis of different staples in the school cafeteria, all the way to looking at abortion rights after the Supreme Court overruled Roe v. Wade. So definitely some variety there, some really interesting articles. It's really impressive the kind of stuff they do on The Buzzer. That's a credit to the editors, to Ms. Rudolph who's running it in Mr. Abrams' absence. And just to finish off, even though there's been an uptick, I know, in flu and COVID cases right now, it seems like the student body is handling it just so well. Like there's not a lot of anxiety around flu and COVID, even though people are getting sick. I think people are handling it really maturely. People are wearing masks, but there's definitely not that anxiety that we were seeing last year, the year before, which is awesome. And I know that a lot of it's thanks to the nurses who are just an amazing resource. So that's actually all I've got for tonight. Thank you.
Where are you guys going on the ski trip, by the way? Where are you planning to go?
I actually don't know. I'll find that out for next time. I think,
Montana, that's right. I guess it depends on the fundraising.
Right, no, just down the hill at the Burke Estate.
Yeah,
That's a good one. Either one.
Worst case scenario, the Burke Estate. It's true. It's pretty steep. Okay, Gus, thank you very much.
Good luck with that.
Moving on to public comment. I don't think we have any public comment, so we're going to move on to the initial highlight of the evening. It's the initial presentation on the portrait of a Hastings learner, and we're going to join Dr. Szymanski for that.
Great. Well, good evening, everyone. Tonight's presentation is focused on the portrait of a Hastings learner. I'll be discussing the purpose for this work, outlining our process to date, featuring our core team members who've been intimately involved in this work, sharing a draft of the different portrait components that have been designed, and describing our anticipated next steps. Time's been dedicated at the end of the presentation for discussion and for questions, so you can anticipate that as well. I'd like to begin with a quote, and then I'll introduce some colleagues who are here with me this evening. This is a quote from Judy Wilson, who's been actively supporting us with our portrait process. Great learning organizations are forward-leaning. They anticipate the actions needed to meet current and future demands, and they are aspirational in their planning. The success of a great school district consistently over decades is based on the constant building of capacity, the accurate assessment of where we've been, where we are, and where we are going, and the coherence with which goals are pursued and achieved. In Hastings, we have a very solid foundation on which to build, and at the same time, it's essential for us to develop a well-coordinated framework for the district's next level of work. And the portrait is really meant to serve as the cornerstone, the foundation for all aspects of the district's K-12 work moving forward, and that includes instruction, co-curricular, professional development, fiscal planning, classroom design, recruitment and hiring, and evaluation and tenure processes. And the portrait is meant to apply to all students in grades K through 12, and together we'll strive to embody essential characteristics, skill sets, and mindsets that we've identified, described in the portrait, as we align all of our work to support each child. So first, I'd like to recognize folks that are here with us this evening. And I would like to, first of all, Alex, Doug, and Sylvia as participants in the process from the Board of Education. I would like to recognize them. Gus as one of our student representatives who's been involved in the process. I'd also like to recognize and thank Camila Dawkins, Assistant Principal of Farragut Middle School, who's here tonight to share her voice, Robin Farrell, Hillside STEAM teacher, and Jael Sanchez, student, and all have very graciously agreed to share about the work this evening and their experience with the process. I also want to recognize Jennifer Spirelli. Thank you for coming as a member of the audience tonight. So the purpose of tonight's presentation is to share the process that we've engaged in thus far around creating the portrait of a Hastings learner, and then share the draft of what's been created, highlight some key insights about process and product, and outline the next phase of the work. And why create a portrait of a Hastings learner? The portrait is meant to be that strategic framework, the foundation for all of our work as a district. I won't read through each of these, but you can see up here we have a very robust core team who have partnered together in participating, and you'll see stakeholders spanning a variety of different roles. We have parents, we have administrators, we have students, we have teachers, we have teaching assistants, and everyone worked together to share their voice in designing. We've had a strong process thus far, and this process has included Portrait of a Hastings Learner core team sessions. We had 2 full-day sessions where we all came together. And our first steps actually began as a group right in this room. And those days were facilitated by Judy Wilson. We started by sharing our beliefs about public education, as well as 3 points of pride about Hastings. We then explored why having a strategy for our efforts over the coming years was important, which was underscored by the assertion that this is not a deficit model. We recognize our strengths and we highlight them, and we think this is wonderful, and how do we grow forward for them? And this is a way for us to have focus, systemic thinking, and coherence. Then we developed the Portrait of a Hastings Learner draft, which will be shared with you this evening. And that came out of looking through the thoughts of the group as intimate insiders to the system, also thinking about analysis of survey data. There were lots of different surveys that went out, student surveys, faculty surveys, parent surveys, and we used a lot of that information along with what we know as parents, as educators in the system, as students living within the system, and we put all of that data together, and that was guiding the development of the Portrait of a Hastings Learner. We also took into account college rates, high school scores, blue ribbon status. This was all part of what we had discussed. And we considered our current mission statement to create a vibrant learning community, and we folded that in as well. So once there was an initial draft that was created, there was a refinement process, and student focus group input, we recruited some insight from 3 different student groups: the Student Union, the High School Affinity Group, and HASP. Then there was more refinement that happened after we got feedback from the students. Then there was continuous input from core group members. Things were fed back to the core group for comment and for additional feedback. And then we had a subset of the core group come together. We called that our last look group. And you can see the names of the people participating in that last look up there as well. And that was really not around changing anything that had been created, but really refining and making sure that everything flowed together. And then finally, there was a draft statement, the final draft, sorry, that was shared with the core group, all of the various components, which I will get into in a moment. And then the final draft was pushed out to all staff prior to this meeting this evening, and now it's to be shared with all of you. So the portrait of a Hastings learner is comprised of all of these different parts. So we've got the Hastings commitment to start it off. Then we've got an articulation of values. We've got the actual portrait of a Hastings learner, which is really the competencies and skills and successes that we want to see in all of our K-12 students. Goals were designed. And then there will be 18-month action steps that have not yet been developed, but that's actually a next step. That will be designed through a collaborative process, January through April. So just from a process perspective, members of the core team self-divided into small groups to create each respective portion of the portrait, as outlined by the bullets here, coming back together as a whole group for input, and then going back into the small groups to revise. And then following the whole group process and the small group process, there were additional feedback points, additional recommendations, and now you have the opportunity to see what's been created. So this is the Hastings commitment. The portrait begins with this commitment. The Hastings commitment to inspire exploration and experimentation, to unleash natural enthusiasm for learning and growth, to invite unconventional and courageous thinking, to cultivate equal parts confidence and compassion in order to expand what one sees as possible for themselves, the community, and society. The next portion of the process are the values, and the next 3 slides will outline the values that the group highlighted. And Robin Farrell has agreed to present these slides. She's made the offering, as well as some additional process considerations. Once several members of the core team came back together for a last look of the draft portrait. So originally these were a list, and then there was an additional part that happened when we did that last look. But Robin, would you mind talking? You can come right to the podium. And I believe the mic is not on yet, so just on the bottom.
Oh, it's on?
Oh, it is? It's on? Great. Okay, thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So, when we came together, the values were the part of the portrait that felt really long, right? Like we opened with this commitment that was just like, oh my goodness, that felt so Hastings, that felt so perfect on everything we wanted to move on. And when you see later the goals. But we got to the end and there were the list of values. And the concern was that although it almost felt like it should be an appendix of what was important to us, it really was the groundwork of where everything came from. It was really the introduction to what we were creating. So what we ended up doing was trying to sort them, and we came across 3 different terms, our 3 C's of contribution, community, or citizenship, and care. We took care, citizenship, and community all together, and the other one, creativity. So these values come out of survey data, thousands of survey points from community members. Community members not even with children in the district right now. So that's how broad-ranging the survey reach was. Students, faculty, parents, educators, all of it. So one area we found was contribution. What are our learners giving of themselves and giving to others? So this was the first one. Our next, and we also felt like, that highlights the opposite of a deficit model, right? We really feel that these values are coming from a point of what is a strength in our district and why, and they're so important. Citizenship was a word we kept kind of switching back and forth between, because we wanted to include community, we wanted to include care. If you look at Hastings Commitment, you see how important it was for us to have that balance between confidence and compassion. And then our last one was creativity, because truly Hastings is a unique district. And this shows the uniqueness, the authenticity, and the ways in which we want our learners to be successful along a wide spectrum of that.
Thank you.
All right. So the portrait of a Hastings learner is the portrait within a portrait, so to speak. And so this is another component that suggests key characteristics or competencies, if you will, that we commit to cultivating in our learners and throughout our system. So as outlined earlier, members of the core team designed this portion of the portrait with strong input from 3 student groups, the Student Union, HASP, and the High School Affinity Group. So one of the small groups working on the portrait dedicated themselves just to this. And again, the process was that small group had conversations to identify these characteristics, went back to the larger core team, made sure that that was all displayed, people had given the opportunity for input. They met back together as a small group. Actually, after the 2-day process that the portrait group was working together, they came back together again, and then it moved to students. And then we came back together again. And so there was this iterative process of working with this section, probably most deeply of all of it, this and the goals, which we'll get to in a moment. But a Hastings learner is empowered, inquisitive, inventive, empathetic, bold, and collaborative. So this idea of being empowered is around asking questions, self-advocating, and having a voice in construction of their learning experience. There's a lot of agency associated with that word. Inquisitive sustains sparks of curiosity, seeking to explore and interact with others and their world. And we had spent a lot of time on this one around what it means to be curious. We settled on this word thinking that it was deeper than, it was a deeper level of engagement, that it's not only engaged, but it's like really hungry and curious about the world.
Almost self-sustaining.
Like a seeker, self-sustaining. Perfect. And then inventive, having the freedom to question, envision, and create possibilities as they use their unique knowledge and skill set to engage with the unknown. Empathetic seeks to understand the experiences and vulnerabilities of others and foster a sense of inclusion, equity, and belonging in the local community and the community at large. Bold. There was a lot of conversation about this word, a lot of conversation. Should it be one thing? Should it be another thing? I think we toyed with rebel, we toyed with daring, and with student input, we came to consensus actually around bold, this idea of constructive risk-taking and thinking of the various personalities of the various learners and the various ages throughout the system, and this idea of constructive risk-taking as a necessary pathway for personal and academic growth and development. So not just in the academic realm, but also that social, emotional, personal realm. And then finally, collaborative, works together towards a common goal, engages in ways that stimulate learning in the classroom, and positively affects the school culture and climate. This next portion of the portrait is around the goals. And one phase of the core team's work involved identifying goals that would be district-wide over time. So just to paint the picture, right in this room, there were very large Post-it papers that peppered the entire wall. And we had the opportunity to move throughout. And part of it was actually a quiet process of really writing and drafting, based on the data that we had and based on the conversation that we had, to identify goals. And members of the core team then prioritized the goals. So then there was another process, again, iterative, where everyone went back and actually made markings against what they had seen against the walls to prioritize certain ones or think about how they went together. And we ultimately narrowed to focus on 3. And what you see here are the 3 that the core team unified around. So number 1, we will foster authentic learning experiences that cultivate passion, aspiration, and action. The second goal, we will nurture a community of diverse thinkers who actively create and participate in a just and compassionate society. And the third, we will honor individuality while respecting our shared humanity. And then each of these goals, looking forward, will have associated action steps that will be designed to span an 18-month period of time. And they'll be very specific, those action steps, to make them actionable and to make them measurable. So we have guest presenters with us this evening. And again, thank you for agreeing to share your time and your voice. And I'd like to invite members of the core team who are here this evening to share their experience in creation of the Portrait of a Hastings Learner, their experience, key takeaways, future impacts on the district. And I'd like to pass the microphone to Camila, to Robin again, to Alex, to Jael, to Gus, just to share some reflections that they've had and some key takeaways, and then thinking about the future impact on our district and the effect that it will have.
Who wants to go first? All right, Camilla, welcome.
I was so excited to be invited to be a part of this committee. I was, more excited to be on toad. But as the process went through, I did identify and select, to be a part and continue to be a part of every part of the process, because I was part of the process in my former district, and it was referred to as the graduate. And I saw how powerful that was and how that graduate was used to create new courses that was offered in the district. The graduate was used when we were interviewing people, for staff members or faculty members, and graduate was used when we wanted to incorporate new clubs or committees. So everything was streamlined and attached to what are we doing in order, what action steps we're taking in order to develop this graduate that we came together as a committee. So I'm looking forward to how this will roll out with these things, and definitely continue to be a part of that process. But also, want to also give a very big thank you to all the other members that were part of this. It was such a bonding experience for us. Especially for me as a new person, I'm able to meet everyone in all the buildings and the board members, but also just a way that everyone had various perspectives that they brought in to be a part of this process, and everyone was very passionate on how they wanted to contribute in order to create the idea of Hastings Learner. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
And thank you for offering to share your voice.
Who's next? Who would like to go?
Maybe the students?
Maybe our students?
Yes. I
Gus,
want
Jael?
you to- Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Hey, Jim.
Very encouraged in the first steps of this process. Well, my us, especially, were very accommodated when asked our thoughts and opinions on certain matters, especially when sketching out the posters initially. Continue with it, I think this is definitely going to help us a lot, and the district as a whole. I feel all the viewpoints that from all the people that were there definitely will help with this the rest of the meeting. Some of the people, some people improve. Some of the future impacts of districts. They're good. Simple as that.
Thanks.
Thank you, Gerald. Thank you.
Here we go. I'm going to stay here if that's all right, as opposed to going up to the.
That's fine. You go, Mike.
I was just really impressed by how well sort of the process and then the document that's come out of it reflects, who we are as a district right now, like the experience that I've had, moving from kindergarten all the way through Miss Farrell's class in 2nd and 3rd grade, all the way up to now in senior year. Like the values and stuff that we've got on there, the goals are things that you see in the classroom every day. Like I've gotten to experience, Jael's gotten to experience. I think it's a pretty special thing to take that all, and put it all together and put it into words. And I think it's going to be really effective in helping to continue that and to advance that and to make sure it's happening in every classroom and in every sort of facet of learning here in the district, which isn't necessarily always in the classroom. But I think it's just really exciting to see how sort of impactful those little word shifts can be, and how well this succinctly captures kind of the ethos of the district.
Yeah. You did a great job, by the way. You're in my group for that, right? Yeah. Gus, thank you.
Thank you both. Our students have really pushed us, and that's been super helpful. And I have to say, even in the last look, when we finally were all together, we saw it all in one space, and having that input and that constructive debate was very, very important, like to make sure that we were on the same page, that we all agreed with the ordering and the flow. And you really pushed us. Our students really pushed us. They pushed us to think very specifically about the words that we were using, because that matters, and the refinement, also the process. And I appreciate what you said very much, Jael, about feeling like you were heard, because that's the point. This is all being designed for students, and thinking about how we can be even more successful in building on the bright spots that you already see illuminated and moving it forward. So,
Yeah, if I can follow on that point, the biggest sort of eye-opener or value for me was seeing, these 6 variables, these existed, and the extent to which they exist in our faculty and staff. They're here because they're here already. And putting them here, separating them or elevating them is kind of us, creating, valuing that capacity that our faculty, our staff already bring to the table. And I remember when you spoke during the meeting, and you spoke as well, it's what our students are saying that they want to receive. And so we talked a little bit about this, that, one of the reasons you have a portrait is to have sort of an alternative measure of what a successful student is or becomes, or what, where they end up. You could have, flip it around the other side. You could have a school where you crammed knowledge into kids and they got great scores and they had the completely vacant, vacuous, actual learning experience. And what we're trying to do here is the opposite of that. That of course there are courses, that there are grades, but there's all this connective tissue that is what a student graduates with. And it's so rarely just a grade or just a class. It's all these other things that they experience in so many different ways, each person in their own way. And so I'm most excited that this is just taking what we are and there was so much enthusiasm from the staff at the school to provide, and saying that we're going to value it properly, we're going to center it properly, and we're going to do it on behalf of the students. So I was really impressed by all of it and happy with the result.
Robin, do you want to add anything?
So I purposely did not look at other examples of portraits before we started this work. I mean, to come in with the keys and we finished, but like last time did. And like Alex was saying, we really nailed exactly what Hastings feels like. And I didn't think it was possible in conversations with some colleagues who were like, this doesn't feel valuable. It didn't feel valuable going into it, because it felt like it was just something that was going to be rubber stamped and pushed forward, and it didn't feel like it was going to reflect what was important to us. And I feel comfortable now being able to return to my colleagues to be able to support what was created and to explain the process. I think we use a lot of data. Like, there is a reason what was put up here was put up here. We can stand behind it. I think we have zoomed in on what makes our district so unique. And now that I have looked at other schools, I really feel confident that if we use these goals as cornerstones for each decision that is made in our district, we will advance what we want to. And that we have to have these talks, and I know looking in front of you and listening into more meetings, and always reading the agenda, and always looking at the minutes and the videos, I do know that this group will have the tough conversations. I know that I feel confident that there will be pushback where there needs to be pushback, and if we're trying something new, making sure that it is aligned with our goals. If we're keeping something, is what we're keeping aligned with our goals. And I think that if we use this portrait correctly, it is going to continue to help our district excel in all of those ways.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
One of the other things I just wanted to mention before we move into next steps, the portrait characteristics balance internal and external and social emotional and academic, and that was very, very deliberate in the decision making and the discussion.
I don't know if other members of the process wanted to say anything. Doug, do you want to share anything now?
No, please.
Yeah. So I was away for 2 days of training with Tri-State, and Judy's instrumental to Tri-State. Tri-State's instrumental to the district. There were 99 of us gathered for 2 days of training from Connecticut, from New Jersey, from New York, and a number of districts talked about having a graduate or a portrait and what matters. And I had Doug and looked, no, Doug, not Doug, but Doug. And there are those who say it'll just go grab words, and I like to write. Just grab some words, McCursey, put them on a piece of paper, get the software, plug it in, you'll get it. And those of you who are in the room know I got a big voice, but I was pretty quiet for 2 days, right? And I think that was really, really important, because this has to live beyond anybody here. And this is Hastings. I'm a rookie on Hastings, but this feels like Hastings. This does not feel like what you go if I just plug some words in and some software. I mean, the other thing which you can't capture here is there were 29 to 30 people in this room. It was vibrant, it was interactive, it was sharing, and there was churn in the building. There was unhappiness in the building those several days. We had staff upset those several days. That's great, fine, be upset. In this room, some of the staff were the toughest customers, some of the students. Jael, I heard about you in my office the other day. Make it colorful, don't make it, I was gonna make it just plain ugly. And Dr. Samanti said, Jael said, give it some life. So we heard you, sir. In the meeting we heard you, but this was a live, vibrant room. And we have to figure out how to convey that, because if anyone feels this was coming from down on high, or, this is Hastings. And some of you, maybe it's an ugly image, but the leadership team's heard me talk about an accordion. Accordions can be expanded or they can be tight, but you're in that accordion, right? We had to start this somewhat tight, but it was still a very diverse group, fully representative tight. Now we have to sort of expand that accordion out and help people across Hastings say, this is us. We're going to still debate it as we get into action steps. We're still going to debate it as this moves ahead. But I'm going to tie it back. Come back to out of these last 2 days with 90 people from 35 districts all around, I would be proud to say to any of them, match this.
Yes.
You know, match this. And it's because it's Hastings.
Yeah, well said. Well
That's
said.
good.
Sorry, I just got moved.
Yeah, I love it.
You just go to the mic, Robin. Yeah.
People at home can't hear you.
So the document went out today, or when it was shared out, and when I was looking at the action steps though, I was wondering if there's going to be time devoted to schools to have representatives from the core team share out the document to faculty and staff, because it wasn't in the action steps. I don't think, I'm so sorry, I didn't put anyone on the spot, I just was thinking of it.
Correct.
As we went over it, because I was saying, oh, I can go back and share it. What do I do? So I just wanted to put that somewhere in like the action step.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
Well, do you want to go to the next steps, and then maybe we can come back to
Thank
that?
Sure, sure. So in terms of that action plan development, the next part of the process is the development of the action plan. And prior to the winter break, we'll be reaching out to the core team to provide some additional input to inform our work, as well as recruiting an action step planning committee. And the idea is for this action step planning committee to include 6 to 8 core team faculty members and 6 to 8 new faculty participants. And so to Bill's point around this idea of accordion is how do we bring others in and how do we ripple the process? And that will also include some feedback over time from the larger group. We're going to be sharing a Back to the Future visioning protocol, which Judy Wilson has shared with us, and that's going to be used with the core team and also the action planning committee. So in the Back to the Future protocol, people are going to be asked, they're going to be told to imagine that it's 2027, 2028, and the district's been wildly successful in the progress that it's made in reaching the 3 goals, and then reflecting upon that success and then delineating the actions and the policies and the behaviors and the learning and the structures that occurred or shifted in the last years to lead towards the success with the 3 goals. And they might also consider what may need to be abandoned in order to move forward. So when something comes in, what comes out, right? So that we're thinking about creating space for that. So the timeline that you're seeing provides a sense of our next steps over time. The December highlights include that initial Back to the Future vision work with the core group, and then the action step planning committee recruitment, as I mentioned. And then in January and February, we'll continue our vision work with the action step planning committee that gets developed. We'll host workshops that are facilitated by Judy Wilson to design those 18-month action steps. And then in March and April, we'll solicit additional feedback in a more formal way, refine what's been created, and implementation of the action steps will begin in July 2023. So the action steps are going to be reviewed on an ongoing basis in approximately every 18-month increment, but maybe even sooner. So we do want that additional voice, and we do want to be bringing others in.
Can I speak to next steps some? So a couple of things here that the board should understand, and I'm going to get to your very good point, Robin, because it's also in my little brain. Everybody finds this is my brain. And I dropped in a puddle on the way into Hillside the other day, and it still survives. So that's why it's my iPad. It doesn't melt in water. But anyway, many districts go into the action work on committees spread out over multiple months. And think accordion. We broadened out to the principals. One was in the room, Lou. Jennifer and Amy and a few others weren't. And they were very, very smart. And they said, if you spread us out over several months, multiple committees, disconnect us, many of us weren't in the room, you're going to lose, and I'm going to use the phrase, you're going to lose the magic that was, and there was magic in this room for 2 days. So we went, okay, could we concentrate it down? So Melissa, and everybody should bow to Melissa on this, because it's just incredible how she's been guiding and listening, guiding and adjusting. So Giles, great, you weren't in the room, but it was powerful. I wanted us to play an old 63-year-old look at a white piece of paper, and she said, Giles said, don't. Bill, you're going to kill it. And Giles said, so I listened, sir. So that's a great example of how we're listening, but the principal said, let's tighten this thing down. Let's make it, and so we went back to Judy and said, what about this? She said, yes, you could have 2 concentrated days of work. So you can see on the calendar, that means roughly by February 8th, not long from now, we'll have a sense what those action steps look like. In other districts and communities, we may not have had a sense until March, April, and we've been so separate, we may not have gotten there. So that's that. I would ask to think out loud here, which is dangerous. I've written down here that this is a freestanding document, thanks to the work. I think the sooner this could be explained by, if you're willing, in Hillside, similarly in the middle school, explained, if you're willing, similarly at the high school, say this is what the board heard. The reason we got it to all the staff today was, Friday, we wanted them to have it before anyone else, but follow up even before we do the action steps, because I think this is really a freestanding document that can be explained and say, we're in process still, but here's where we are. If you let me, December 14th, I'm in public with the PTSA, that would be a nice moment to say to them, let's explain this some. And maybe, Melissa, you do that, you step up, or maybe some of you would come out that evening, because you have much better voices on this than I am, but that would be time. So even while we're still doing that, use this document, faculty meetings, PTSA outreach, community outreach, love to videotape you all who just did this so well, go and, this video we're sharing out, that Jackie Saviano is sharing out, could do that. But that could be starting out to expand this accordion.
Yep, fully agreed. And typically when we make presentations to the board, full transparency, the leadership team has a copy of the slides, it goes to the broader faculty, it goes to all of you. We want to make sure that we cascade that. But to your point, I think it's very important that we then have some more intimate discussions in terms of each of the different buildings. So, agreed. It was good that you brought that. Yeah.
And also, at the risk of thinking out loud live here, I think one thing that will be really valuable, just because I've literally been doing this type of thing with clients over the last 3 weeks with 4 different clients, I think getting some sort of visual that shows the interrelationship between values, goals, commitment, and portrait, because right now, I think it could be confusing when you get to the action step planning, when you get to the action planning stage, what's guiding my action? Is it the values? Is it the portrait elements? Is it the commitment? Is it the goals? And without that interconnected visual, I think it could get very confusing.
Agreed. And we had the last look group started talking about this. And Jael, I think you brought it up actually. So, but the discussion was around how it was going to be visually presented, right? Yeah, I'm pretty sure it came from you. I'm trying to remember. But I actually met with Ezra Elliott, who's our art department chairperson, to think about whether or not there might be an opportunity for student design from a web-based.
So I want to be really clear on a distinction between
parts.
design and relationship. I think getting clear on the relationship. So for example, there's a world in which you could say values are at the core, which then emanates out to goals, which then emanates out to portrait elements and our commitment. You could say commitments at the center. There's a lot of different ways you could frame it, but I think we want to have a way. Now, if we frame it one way and someone says, that's great, but I like to talk about it different, that's fine. I think we have one way to give to people. Then once we have that, someone can actually say, to bring that to life and design could look like this. It's a separate process, I think.
Yep, agreed. And I also just wanted to recognize, I know Bill had suggested, the question of might there be that opportunity for a student to actually do the web-based component, which is, would be based off of what you just articulated, what's the idea that we're putting forth, and then how do we then show that front-facing, 2 separate things.
Are there any other questions or comments from
I'm not,
board members?
I'm not, are you done? I'm not sure. Oh, you're done, okay.
Thank you. Questions?
I actually do want to recognize a couple people, and then I'll really be done. But I want to publicly recognize and thank Judy Wilson for her guidance and support throughout the process. She is an amazingly strong listener and cheerleader for our district, and she really so what Bill was just sharing about how many districts will design action steps off of the goals and have those three separate groups, like in the same way that we listened when it was suggested to us that we unify it so it's coherent, it's a group that's working on this. Judy also is very flexible and has personalized to Hastings, thinking about what we value here and how that fits in terms of context and process and how that all works together. I want to recognize our core team members for their amazing efforts, really healthy, productive debate, and some pretty difficult conversations, and really, to the point that was raised earlier, this idea of just being a team and feeling like something really wonderful was happening in the creation process. The student groups for their valuable input that served to shape everything that we were doing. And then that last look subgroup, I thought that the refinement process was so thoughtful, and I was very, very impressed, and I left that room feeling like it was a real bright spot to hear everybody's input and to really bring it all together. And then, of course, this evening's presenters for their time and their insights. So thank you all. Now I'm really done.
So I wanted to first say that I'm very excited that we have the portrait of a Hastings learner. I'm very honored that it's happened on my time here, because I would just say something that I'm grateful my father would always say to all 4 kids of us, that if you aim at nothing, you will hit nothing. I mean, he would say if you aim at nothing, you will hit it. So it forced all of us to always, even if we are playing, he was a military guy, so that was totally not too much, but but it's always that aiming at something so that you can hit something, at least, even if you don't hit. So I'm very happy finally, and thanks to Doug and all, Sylvia is not here, but all those who were here bringing that thought process to bear, that we should start something that we can aim at so that we can hit something. So I'm very, very happy that this has come to fruition, and I want to just state that up front, and thank you for all those who participated and my colleagues who were part of the core team. I'm hoping that the community will embrace this. I like the fact that Dr. McKessie was upfront with the fact that there was disagreements, which is important because that's what brings consensus building. And so that I was waiting to hear that, because I get really scared when everybody is yay-yaying things, and I'm like, where is that silent voice that is being drowned, right? So I like the fact that that opportunity was created in a way that people were able to disagree and be comfortable about it without feeling, and out of it came this beautiful thing. So I just want to, I like the fact that it happened, and I like the fact that even if and one of the things that I like about seeing the 6 aspects of it is it doesn't seem to be dogmatic. It has that free space within it that allows for growth in each part of it. And so I want to point out all these strengths. And I also want to echo what my colleague said here, that I know it's a working process, so that process needs to happen because that's critical. I say this because, for example, with the empathetic, bold, collaborative, you had some definition with it. But with the values and which ones, I was over there and I just moved it. But we had certain, yes, this one, I have it here. Yes, so there were the Hastings commitment, and then we had the values before we came to the portrait of a Hastings learner. So I know that the focus was on the portrait of a Hastings learner, but even the commitment, right? How are you defining it before you talk about the bullet points? It's necessary. The values, how are you defining it? And I'll speak a little bit about values. So when I was sort of get on the board, I used the term creating public value and collaborative solutions because of my training on it in an executive education that I did. And I had people ask me, what do I mean by public value? Because there was even a conversation on social media when I was trying to express that my personal values are my personal values, but I'm elected to serve on a so the term value, especially in our community, has something about it, and I know you know what I'm saying. So it will be important when what my colleague said, when it's being created, that one sentence definition will be important for people to know what those terms mean, because trust me, we may say the same thing, but the cognitive dissonance that is happening is totally amazing, which sometimes creates this uncomfortable thing, although we are saying the same thing. So yes, but ultimately, thank you all. This is amazing. Thank you.
Thank you, Damaris. Thank you. Are there any other questions, comments, or observations?
I have a few comments and observations. So, first, I want to recognize all of the hard work that went into this. I know it was 2 whole days and there were a lot of people, and I wasn't there, so it's easy for me to look at it and say, where's this and where's that? But that's what I do. So I just want to make some comments on what I think. And perhaps there are reasons why those things are missing from the document, and maybe just what my hopes were, and maybe it's the next step and I'm just not understanding the process. I get it overall. I think there's lots of wonderful things in here, so I want to start with that. But some things that I feel like are missing is that it seems very soft to me. I'm missing the part that talks about academic rigor and developing scholars. And there's a lot about community, but I'm missing the part that's about individual excellence and the whole child, and this multifaceted whole child, and the whole student, like the academics and arts and sports. And going along with this academic rigor, I'm not seeing the part that's like, we're going to develop readers and writers and talk about social sciences. And there's like some ideas about that are, one of the things talks about courageous thinking, but it doesn't talk about courageous discussion, which I think is something more important there. So the questioning and the critical analysis, I feel like is there in part, but it's very, very soft. And one of the things that I was hoping for was this idea of relevant learning, because what's relevant today is different than in 5 years from now. So we look in 2028, the learning that we're going to need then. And so that for me is how you think about the future, is that we're always looking at what the relevant learning for the time is. So I think that that's kind of my main parts, this idea of the academic rigor, the more focus on individuality and individual learning versus constantly looking at what the community needs and what the community wants and focusing on the community, which is important, but ultimately you can only do that if you have the individual person. And then this more idea of critical analysis, and one word I like instead of bold is audacious, but maybe you tried that and it didn't work.
Thank you. Are there any other questions, comments, observations? No? Well, I want to thank everybody who participated. It was quite an experience, and I do think that the actionable layer is going to pull everything down to a real place, and I'm excited to see it.
Sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, of course.
So, let me ask you some technical question. I may be wrong, but what my colleague said about the academic part, I saw it in the inquisitive and incentive as an action plan. Am I wrong in thinking that, or Sorry,
No,
go ahead.
I think the thing that's still to come, that's missing, right, are the specific action steps, which is important. So if you're thinking about these goals more as the forest, we still need the trees. And so what you outlined around this idea of academic rigor and scholars, like I see that fitting in to number one, that we're thinking about like thinking about rigor as authentic experiences where students are passionate and there's aspiration and there's action, bias towards action for their learning process. So specific action steps under that would be a little bit more of the refinement to talk about what that looks like specifically and how it's being measured. I heard also what you said about that whole child piece and thinking about learning being relevant. And so that idea too, and not just the collaboration part, which really arguably is very important, you know, especially now in terms of how people work together in their environments, even professionally. But to your point, number three was something that we talked about in our goals around really having that balance, this individuality piece and recognizing the individual learner, and also looking at the individual as a member of the community and having a shared humanity about that. So, so to your point, I do think that specificity that you're looking for is yet to come in terms of that really specific action step development.
Right. Yeah, because I guess the whole thing really that I'm thinking about is this idea of teaching how to think, not what to think.
Yes.
Exactly.
And
Yes.
that for me is very key
Important.
in the learning environment.
Right. And just to highlight what was said around, for example, the idea inquisitive, right? Yes, so in the portrait characteristics, this idea of sparks of curiosity, interacting with others, interacting with their world, that there's this agency that we have as learners, and that fits into rigor. And rigor does not mean harder stuff,
Right.
to use a technical word, you know.
Yeah.
But it's this idea of really elevating that critical thinking and thinking about who we want our learners to be in this very empowered, inquisitive, inventive, like agency-oriented learning, and taking, again, what we already have in our system and saying, these are our bright spots, and how do we ripple that and make it more systemic and make it bigger? Is really what the group has been thinking
Yeah,
about.
and I think, Doreen, I think these are good challenges, because I think the next steps are what comes clear here. And it's interesting about the last 2 days, because I never knew what metacognition was. Everyone in the room did. But that's learning how you think, learning how you learn. Wow, I learned something at this old age. But I actually think, and this is a friendly counter, I think this is actually a harder path to go. Because I've been in this business so long, what I've seen is, and I've had a phrase, people can go around, I've stood for compassion and intellectual rigor, intellectual and compassion. People say, what do you mean? So I try not just to get into the academics, because we could say we want our test scores here, we want our certain courses here, but where does that leave us? So I think we have this, which is, I think, harder to get to, more aspirational, if you will, more Hastings, but then somewhere in here we have to fold in that to do this, you've got to be good with numeracy. You've got to be good with literacy. And we have to be really good at teaching to that. And the metacognition idea has got to be there. So we do need to find a way to layer that in. But I actually think this is that much harder, what we've laid out here. But now I've got to figure out where to fit in some of those specifics to assure parents that we are paying attention to the fundamentals.
And I'm not saying, I don't want you to think I'm saying it when I say like academic rigor and scholar, that I'm thinking everybody has to get really good grades or really good scores on tests. That's not what I mean.
Yeah.
It should be as much as the individual can do, we work towards that individual.
Standard.
So, you know, if you're like on the high end or you're struggling or whatever, wherever it might be, but wherever you are, the scholar
best
that
possible
you can
of your
be
scholar.
is what, you know, what we're always hoping for.
I just want to, if you could put the inventive part out there, and that, my colleague saying this speaks to, I could clearly see it, what she was asking. You get what I mean? And that's what I meant by, and I think that's what you're saying that is going to happen with the actionable steps. But when I look at inventive, it's all there. In recent times, we are, in academia, we are vying a way of thinking that we are co-creators of knowledge. Because, I mean, whose knowledge are you using as a standard? Think about it, right? When we talk about research, whose knowledge is out there that you are picking? You have to also add to that body of knowledge. So this freedom to question, right? Ambition, create that equitable possibility for everyone to coexist within that funds of knowledge that we are creating together as I mean, we are all educators, even if you're a learner and a teacher. So I could see that richness there. But again, of course, I'm an educator, so I know it. But what about the larger community? There are a lot of educators there as well. But we want everyone to know. Of course, we would not know everything, but at least I think that I'm very happy. That's all I'm trying to say. So I'm glad that at least what you said, I can see it, and I'm hoping that it will come out clearer.
I think that's right. You know,
sorry.
I was gonna say, if you go back to the slide where you saw all the members, the 29 members that was there. Yeah, so we had, and I really wanted to, just give a big thank you to all the members in the way that we had such rich discussions where they pushed our thought process because there's so many different perspectives that was there. And so we did have that conversation very specifically about rigor and, we were trying to steer away from the whole idea of attaching grades as being excellence. And I exactly had to say our E&L and our special ed teachers that were part of the team really pushed us into that. So, having us create these goals so it is inclusive. And so everyone feels that they've accomplished their own personal goal. That's why we came up even with the goal saying to honor their individuality. So, that definitely came from some of our special ed teachers and the E&L teachers who have goals that represent all the students or everyone that's part of the school.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you don't want to have grades private because then you just have grade inflation just to meet the goal. That doesn't even make sense, right?
I'm just and it was very productive, and it was a good discourse.
Yeah.
And it was so definitely when we started speaking, I started shaking my head because it's the same conversation that we had, and everyone participated in including and looking at the different views that we don't normally necessarily see, even though we're around all the teachers in the building, but we kind of work with certain groups of students sometimes in isolation.
Yeah.
But we had we had your exact conversation. We had a parent stand up because a teacher said, hey, look, I have my school day. I'm reading, writing, this is what has to get done. So these other aspirational goals sound fabulous, but I can't just shove everything out because I'm losing them. And so Dr. McPherson was like, do it. If you're great at it, I support you. Shove it out. And paraphrase. And then the parent was like, no, don't. Because then when my child goes to take the test, or my child needs to then perform and write a true paragraph to share their thinking, they can't. So those were the conversations we had. Like Dr. McPherson said, if we can get to these civic engagement, if we can get to these actions, we are assuming and substituting these rigor goals underneath it that will come out in the action steps. And the same thing with the whole child. The whole child was like, right there. It was right there. And that was goal, we actually had conversations between goals 2 and 3. So as we get to the action steps, we look back at goals 2 and 3, we were clearly trying to delineate which one zoomed in on this whole child, which one zoomed in on social emotional as well. But exactly what you said, both of those issues were very strongly answered, back and forth.
Great. I read so much about, China's eating our lunch, in terms of kids and what they're learning. I don't want to be a member of the CCP. I don't agree with anything that China does. But we're raising children to be the leaders of the next world, and they can't fall behind. So that's what I'm saying, all of the soft stuff is really important to me, but that's how we stay ahead and, you know, freedom wins, you know, so that's my
Yeah.
big point.
If I may, this is a comment to elaborate on this. I really like this. I want to go back to what my colleague, Doc, had mentioned, the relationship, the connectivity, the holding of hands together, and not just spotlighting one thing and leaving the other undone. But if that is not somewhat communicated, and since you are part of the core team and this is what you do, probably if you go back, that you could help with that process, because that is actually speaking to a lot of what people are asking. And I know this is not complete, and I was just waiting for the action part for me to see. But I would say this, that what I'm hearing my other colleagues saying is that the limit to every child must be pushed to the maximum they can be. And so equity doesn't mean that you are pulling everyone down. Inclusivity doesn't mean that you are pulling everyone down to mediocrity, but that each individual is both utilitarian and individual, collective and individual, so that somehow the framework can support the individualistic goal that pushes you to the maximum that you can be. And that is necessary, because then it doesn't allow for excellence. So yeah, I get it.
That's exactly.
Yeah, and
Thank you for summarizing, Ryan.
Yeah, and honestly, and I would say
I summarized.
summarize. There you go.
That's a miracle.
But I would say that's exactly what sort of the underlying theme of the meetings was. It was really these 6 things. It's, you know, increasing the capacity that somebody has in those areas, and it was, you know, inclusive of all the different ways that people do that. So, no, I think it's going to prove its mettle.
Great, thank you so much.
Alex, down here?
Do you mind if I just jump in real quick? So we were in the same group and had this discussion about the word rigor. We were working on goal 1, and we will foster. We were going back and forth. Should we say authentic or authentic and rigorous? That was a discussion that was happening. The idea behind that was that if there are learning experiences that are cultivating passion, aspiration, and action, those are inherently going to be rigorous. You're saying if we want to beat China, we're going to do that by teaching students that want to be starting robotics clubs and want to be starting, entering competitions to do coding. That idea of passion, aspiration, and action, going and taking what we do in the classroom and applying that to the real world, applying that to, what do you want to do, next steps, isn't that sort of our idea was that's the definition of the highest level for taking it and applying it.
That's what we spoke about. We talked a lot about the difference between sort of observational curiosity, like, oh, that's interesting, and the sort of self-sustaining, aspirational nature of it. And so that was, it was a big part of the discussion.
Great.
For sure. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Any other questions or comments, Bill and the team?
Said enough.
Okay. I want to thank everybody for coming. I really appreciate it.
Thanks,
and Dr.
everyone.
Szymanski, thank you
Thank
for
you
putting
so
it together
much.
as well. Thank you. Good night.
Pleasure to work with you.
Yeah, thank you for extending your evening. Thank
Yes.
you.
Yes, very important voices.
And I think we should thank Melissa too. She keeps thanking everybody, but I know.
Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you for your collaborative work as well.
Administrative reports are just entered into the record. Is that correct?
Yeah, okay.
Let me on the superintendent, we're being just written, not verbal. But let me just say one thing, because a letter did go out today regarding health matters. And I just want to share with the board quick thinking on that. It arrived late yesterday. There is a key statement in there. It's all voluntary, it's all recommendations. There is a statement in there about masks. Most people know me, I often have my mask with me, I often have it on. But in districts near us, there's a lot of nervousness about that in there. So not many other districts have yet forwarded that letter to families. I'm complimenting my colleagues on what I'm about to say if they're listening. I felt I had to get that out, and yes, my name's on it. I had to get that out because in Hastings, I just thought it would help our families to know here's what both the commissioners of health and education had said, it's advisory. We are seeing an uptick in all our flu, the respiratory, and COVID. The plan is to stay exactly as we are. Let me stress that. We're planning to stay exactly as we are operationally. And just if families can follow those guidelines, voluntary, we have a better chance of staying as we are. But I just felt it was very important to get that out as soon as possible, because Hastings families would know that something went out, and well, why didn't we hear about it? So others may be waiting in the region until Friday or later, because there's a meeting of all the superintendents Friday, and I think they may compare notes. I just felt I had to get it out. And I told my colleagues I would be sending it out. So I hope that was the right move for Hastings, just to have the information shared.
So to be clear, this is a recommendation, not a requirement to wear a mask.
It's-
Children are not going to be shamed if we're not wearing masks or questioned about it.
Oh, and this is how we've been. So it's a great question, Doreen, to underscore that we've been this way now since masks became optional. I think we're very healthy about that here in Hastings. Masks are on and off as people need to be. There is the 1 5-day requirement, though, per the state, if you're coming off a confirmed positive COVID. For those next 5 days when you're back, if you're well, come back, you do need to have the mask on. That's non-negotiable, but otherwise, it's your choice. And we've been living that now since last spring or so when the mask mandate was removed.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Dr. McCarthy. Thank you for pointing that out. Guys, at this opportunity, we're going to go into business items, so feel free to pack up and.
I think I will take the opportunity.
Thank you very much. Thank you for watching. Coming.
When you get home.
Yes.
Thank you, Gus.
We're going to move on to business items. Are there any questions or comments about business items 1 through 14?
I did. I have a question about number 6, salary advancements for the school year corrected spreadsheet. I'm curious what the corrected. Did we see it once? Because I thought we said something before. Was it just incorrect with the numbers one? And so these are just all the teachers that took the extra classes and reached a new step to get a higher salary.
Any other questions or comments about business items 1 through 14? Is there a motion?
I just had a question on the technology BOCES RFS, that one? Number 2.
Number 2?
Just,
That's just our BOCES contract for the year.
that's the entirety of the BOCES
Yes,
contract?
and then from this point on, there were additional, like an example here, as a recommendation to either add additional softwares or different things. So it shows kind of what the contract is for the tech, which we do 100% of it, or close to 100% of the BOCES. And then that's our additional kind of billing, and then as we go on, like, and we actually realized that typically we put this on a bit earlier, and then I think we put on, it comes on, but it's always a modified document, so it demonstrates the services that we started the year with, and then as we add, the board approves those as individual items. So if we were to get a request for another software, we were to add it to this, it would just come out as an individual item, and this would revise this contract.
Could I ask about, within that, there's something called iTutor, is that? Am I reading it? iTutor for small group, is it 20,000? Am I reading that correct?
Yeah, and actually, so this one, we already got a credit on that, so they rolled over services that we had previously had. But as an example, and that has already been credited because we had, during COVID, had subscribed to that particular contract. But because this is their initial service request, and it reflects the majority, it does get modified with this one. It should have actually been approved early on, and it's modified as it goes. And that's an example of something that we've already felt the service on.
Oh, so we don't have the service, and this is like a credit, gotcha.
Yeah, it was something that we had, you see the credit, I'm sorry, it actually is 0, so actually, I'm looking at it. If you look at our current contract, we no longer subscribe to it.
Gotcha,
I want
thank
to
you.
I have 2 more questions. Number 4, the HTA mentor MOA. So it sounds like the teachers who act as mentors to new teachers are getting paid. Is that new? Why are we?
I can share about that. So the way that it's currently been designed is that anyone who participates as a mentor receives an in-service credit for 15 hours over the course of a semester, and they can earn that 2 times over the course of the school year by assuming mentor roles. When we are thinking of our more senior, more veteran faculty members who do not necessarily need the credit, it actually disincentivizes them to mentor because they don't need the credit. And so this specifically allows the option of pay rather than in-service credit so that we have experienced educators who are further incentivized to mentor.
And just to be clear, when people earn credits, ultimately you pay for that as an advance for salary.
That goes into the salary advancement.
It actually, in some ways, it's costing.
It's a win-win. Yeah.
And can I ask another question? Sorry. Regarding Lou Del Bianco, number 12, the Make a Good Choice. What are his? It's like he's going to tell you about his experiences. Can you tell us what Lou's
I know.
all about?
Yes, sure. So Lou Del Bianco is an artist. He's a performer that falls under cultural arts. He has a variety of different programs. This particular one is around good choices. He's an expert performer. He's actually been a partner with Lincoln Center. I worked with him previously in other districts. I was delighted to see that Hastings actually had him coming here, which predates me, but the program is different based on what the needs are of the building. So this is something that has been historic to Hillside, bringing him in, and he is absolutely fabulous. He's one of the most talented presenters for an assembly that I've seen. And again, the choice of program is based on what's necessary for the school at that time.
And how does this get paid? Is there a grant from the PTSA or something, or we
No,
pay?
we have an arts ed budget, which we work closely with the PTSA on recommendations on what we select each year.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Is there a motion to approve business items 1 through 14?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Moving on to placement services for CSE and CPSE. Are there any questions or comments? Is there a motion to approve for placements for CSE and CPSE?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. On personnel, we're going to vote on a consent agenda. Are there any questions or comments about our appointments, our amendments, or our leaves of absence? Is there a motion to approve our appointments, amendments, and leaves of absence?
I have one question.
Okay, no, that's it. Question?
It's underneath my Is Jamie Rubino related to our Rubinos?
That was answered, yeah? Okay. Sure. Is there a motion to approve our appointments, amendments, and leaves of absence?
So moved.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Are there any questions or comments about the meeting minutes from our November 21st meeting? Is there a motion to approve our minutes? Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Sorry.
Committee reports for facilities. Are we doing a report this evening? Or no?
No, because we just haven't been able to.
Okay. Okay, right. That's what I figured. In policies, we have up for second read the set of policies that constitute sort of the video participation meta policy. Are there any questions or comments about policies 2325, 2310, 2340, 2360?
I still have some questions.
Yeah.
So 2325 That's the same one that was in the public hearing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Just help me understand between clause 1 and clause 2 here. It seems as I read clause 1, there's a world in which 7 board members in public, 7 board members could tell the board clerk with enough notice for 24 hours, whatever, 48, 24 hours, I'm going to take this meeting remotely in public, without any extraordinary circumstance, and it would be a legitimate public meeting with people on Zoom, let's just say, in 7 different public places. How is that, so explain to me how it couldn't be interpreted that way.
Because there's no quorum established at one place.
Such members may participate in all aspects of the meeting, including establishing a quorum, discussions, and voting.
If we are all
Do we have a policy
someplace-
about quorum that's specific to being in person? Because that's sort of the missing piece, I think, that you're touching on.
Same place
Yeah,
is
that's what I
quorum.
recall.
Same place, same space is quorum. So that's why there was a section during the, so far as, in my understanding, and please clarify, same space is quorum. So let's say that if we are all, let's say, we went for one of our retreats outside of this space, and somehow we got stuck, and so we decide to have a remote, like we are in Maryland somewhere, just
Sounds nice.
and I know, right? And then we decide we have a scheduled regular board meeting, and we decide to all be on Zoom at the hotel. When we are all in the same space, we can have a regular board meeting, although we are not in this physical space. So far as that announcement is made, if quorum is met, let's say 5 of us are in the same lobby, and then the other 2 are somewhere, we can have. And then the information is sent earlier, although you've announced to the public that we're going to have here. But if we are all at 7 different spaces, unless it's COVID, I don't think, unless it's sanctioned by the state, I don't think that is quorum. Number 1. So can you explain the original,
Everybody has to disclose their location and it has to be
even if you are in separate spaces, it's that will be established through the Zoom. Oh, okay.
Could we?
I thought in my institution is space, physical space. Got it. So the only criteria for COVID was opening it to the public. That was it. Oh, okay. So there's more leeway.
But then
I didn't realize that.
Doug's criticism stands then, because we don't have a
Yes.
firm definition of quorum. So you could have a diffuse quorum, so to speak.
Correct.
Do we have any separate policy a local policy on what constitutes
no,
quorum, or
quorum
no?
is state.
Quorum?
Yeah, quorum is quorum.
Isn't quorum always
2351.
4?
But
We have to
This could be
get,
remote quorum, is
Yeah.
what this policy is saying.
it said, I read it as,
That makes
so I read it
sense.
wrong when I read that we need to have a quorum in person.
It doesn't say that.
Have
Not
plus
for
one.
one.
It doesn't have to be.
I
No,
think
go
that
ahead.
maybe a
This is the
different
original
initially
policy,
had-
and it just states,
If
we
I,
are not
yeah, the
voting on
one
the
that was
original one.
posted for the top of the meeting,
I'm sorry?
the
Yeah,
first
same
read-
thing.
first read.
that one didn't have it either? So you're saying I'm reading between lines and making stuff up
Such
for myself?
this is the exact sentence. Such
Let me get in on
members
that. Let me take a look at that.
may participate in all aspects of the meeting, including establishing a quorum. Doesn't say it has to be in person.
Yeah.
I don't, but this isn't the, when
This
did
is
we
the
vote
original
on this?
one from the state.
But when was that, when you say original, when was this, though? This has, this
This is pre-COVID.
video conferencing in public locations was like, yeah, but I guess, I just,
So Doug, do you
yeah.
have a problem if we have 3 people in the auditorium and
You could.
4 people on video conferencing?
This could be 7 people on video conferencing.
So that's not, we want to be clear with what Melissa is saying. One is not altered. One is something that existed before COVID.
I want to check on that. I don't think that's true.
I'm not finding
But
it.
Doug, do you have a problem if we had 7 people
I
all
do.
remote? Because there are some meetings that we've had which have been for specifically one actionable item. You know, specifically one after a vote where it was 7 minutes long. And I do believe, you know, I checked in from my lunch period. I don't
can
see it
I-
as being something that's going to be abused, but I'll stop. Damaris?
Yeah, so
Dr. Lang?
I'm part of the policy committee, so we did make phone calls to clean up and correct me. I have my colleagues Maureen and Doreen here. So I want to state, Jeremy, just to clarify where your thoughts are. There are 2 separate conversations here. One is something that already exists and we are not even touching it. The only reason why it's there is just to be able to allow for the extraneous condition 1, which doesn't require a disclosure. But that, and we, in talking to the lawyer and trying to understand it, that the explanation, the first one that you're seeing is the state law, period. That's it. Because we are is by the state. We are working by the state standard.
Public Officers Law, Section 104.
Exactly. So it's a law, and that's all there is to it. However, Doug is trying to get a deeper understanding that if this is what the law is saying, then this is what could happen regardless of the new extraneous thing that we are talking about. So he's not talking about the other one that you are thinking of. He's talking about the original, which is before COVID, this is what could have been allowed. Now, let's get the understanding. And that's what he's questioning right now.
Yeah, I think the gray area, what Dr. Lang's touching on, the gray area is that the old law, even though it was the old law, functioned without a clear definition of an in-person quorum.
The quorum, yeah.
And I think Doug's fear, which is somewhat valid,
Which is
in my
legit.
point, is if you know, one of the things that the board tries to provide is a regular rhythm of meetings, and because that helps attract people to participate with it. And if we had a situation where a board decided that, you know what, we're just going to have virtual meetings all the time, they're going to be longer, they're going to be less interactive, whatever, you know, we're changing what the nature of what this policy as it's written allows a change of the nature of what a board meeting is, potentially detrimental. So it seems like the little hole that maybe we should plug is to simply say that we need an in-person quorum, and then all the
Correct.
other things flow from that. Is that, am I paraphrasing you?
Yes,
okay, Doug?
really well.
I think I think that's it. I mean, I pulled up Public Law 104 here. It doesn't provide any more clarity.
Yeah, it's the same. I think that the bone of contention here is when we say quorum, what do we mean?
What do we
Is it dispersed quorum? But in my and that's what I thought in my institution. Quorum is whether it's in person or virtual. It has to be at the same space. But it turns out that from what Doug is saying, that old law doesn't explicitly state that. And so it makes sense to be concerned that you can imagine all of us at different locations and we have, I will pull a fast one here. There is a serious budget issue. We are like, why don't we all disclose where we are and not be here in person and have some Zoom meeting and have people here?
Right.
Come on, the engagement will not be. So that's different. I think it's going to go back to the policy meeting with number 1 to see, and the question is more about quorum.
Right.
That is the bone of contention here. Then the second part is the externals situation, which we.
Suzanne's cover
Oh,
memo.
sorry.
Suzanne's cover memo, did you find it when she transmitted?
We're just looking at the New York State Open Government, like, with
Jeremy, you want to make a
yes,
point?
definition
Of
of what
quorum.
constitutes
Quorum, yeah.
And it's clear, was not as clear, but I believe as I'm reading it, it's suggesting that a certain amount of people have to be together physically.
Exactly, in the same space, even if it's
It
virtual,
does-
yeah.
And this is actually an updated Q&A document, we would have to confirm that with Suzanne, but it's suggesting that people, in order to have a quorum, there would have to be a certain amount of people are physically together.
But that's not what this says.
That's not what this
I know, it
says.
doesn't, and
That's what he's saying, yeah, that's what you're questioning.
And there's a Q&A that's a recent Q&A attached.
Correct, that explains it.
Members of the public body may count toward quorum, and it speaks to that, may count, that you have to be, it says it could be anywhere, but it does talk about, it seems as though it's suggesting those people are together.
Correct.
And then the other people.
Yeah, I mean, CUNY, I mean, I know we've done that, and that's how I've understood it in that public, like even, although we are going back to normal per se, when we have virtual meetings, and it's, quorum needs to be established, you have to be in the space of at least majority, which is half plus one.
And then, sorry, go ahead.
No, Maureen, I think, summed it up pretty clearly
Correct.
there. I think
Maureen
since it's
summed
not a
it up.
pressing issue, it doesn't really seem much. I mean, you send it back in there, we'll just have to do a first read, a second read again, right?
No, this is the
But,
second read.
yep, Maureen?
I mean, I think the intent, at least in our initial discussion, and we had a bunch of language changes, I would just point out that, like, it seems to have gotten more confused in our changes, but I think we pointed out different things that were not as unclear as this. But really, it's supposed to be like, the quorum is the majority, right? And the exception is those calling in. Otherwise, and we didn't even know if there was a tech issue with
This is a
7 people
draft
calling in,
bill.
right? That's another
Here
thing.
that we didn't put in that, it's like only if there's no tech issues.
But there
Right.
have been a meeting where we basically wanted to everybody call in, you know, like, it was just a really quick one. But if that's not legal, I think it wouldn't be that big of a problem
Well,
either.
according to this, it is legal.
Not what Maureen just read.
I know, that's what I mean, it's
All right, so
contradictory.
why don't, I
Thank
think
you, guys.
it's a fairly easy fix.
Yeah.
So we could make a local policy about quorum. you know,
Oh,
based off
wow,
the state
so
policy.
it means that we can't even have executive session where we just Zoom in, because there'll be no quorum if you're at separate places.
Yeah, we would have to reschedule, you know.
No, we could do executive session because that's not, doesn't need to be open to the public.
Because you
Yeah,
are not
yeah,
working.
But you're supposed to open an executive session.
Session
You're supposed
in
to
a
open a public
regular-
meeting. You're supposed- I think everything got a little bit confused during COVID, and things switched and switched back, and I think this concern I'm raising probably, it wouldn't even have crossed people's minds pre-COVID, because who would have thought of 7 people all calling into a
It's even
teleconference?
technologically possible, right.
Yeah, and like, so I just think it's, I think we should just ask the pointed question of, who's it, Suzanne that's
Yeah,
helping
and
us?
it's,
Yeah.
and it's,
Just the pointed concern that, look, none of the 7 of us are on the board. 3 people run who have a variety of different opinions about stuff, and 3 of them say, you know what? Read this policy. We actually don't have to show up. Let's all just do this. And then they just drive through a new reality. That's the stuff I'm concerned
so,
about.
so it's a very pointed question for Attorney Volpe. It's
Including establishing
1A,
quorum.
it's
1A,
Law
correct.
104 here.
The one
Right,
before.
in-person quorum.
Do you have additional questions still on 103?
No.
Because part of what's gone, all our entities have been, which is fine, all our entities have been on the video conferencing. And thank you, Doug, for being very thorough here, because you caught this. We've been focused elsewhere, and this one almost slipped through. That's where we need to go back and double check with her. But are there, so Melissa D., you'll help me ask her the right, or do you want to ask her tomorrow?
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, well, this one
That's
doesn't
104.
have, the same quorum thing, so this one, this one, and we put the number in, right?
Yep.
We put like, I mean, this one, I think we've ring fenced it enough to, keep potential bad behavior from showing up. It's just this
Yeah.
other one seems to be,
Yeah.
have a huge potential hole in it.
Let's go back to her. I'm recalling another memo from her that said something about 104, but let's just go back and be clear on it.
Yeah. I want to say that what you've just said is not just going to be 1, because if quorum is what you just read, maybe we are still not sure, which we are going to clarify. Think about it. We have an executive session, and it's a quick decision that needs to be done, and for some reason we can't all be there. That is going to be a problem. Even if we are going to rely, even this bleeds into 103 also, because the issue here is identifying what quorum means. And if it means people, majority plus one must be, half plus one, sorry, must be in the same space, it's affecting everything else. Think about it.
Yeah, I mean, we never had a
So
problem.
it wouldn't, Because with executive session, you have to meet publicly, announce it and go back. And the public meeting is only in effect when quorum is reached. So that can be problematic, and that's why they've left it like that, because they are lawyers, they should have thought through it.
Well, I can say that in the first 4 years on the board, never met via phone or video conference in an executive session. It never happened. We always came to the school. So, it's maybe just a different, look, maybe there's a different time and place. It's just as soon as you start opening up these Pandora's boxes, people start abusing them for all different other reasons. That's what I'm concerned about.
Yeah, I think it's pretty fundamental. Having a good definition of quorum is just a reasonable follow.
Yeah, correct. And whatever it is it is what it is.
Yep.
So does this mean we have to go back to a first read and then a second read again?
It would be probably pretty quick.
No, I think you can just do a second.
This was what the first read is for, that kind of thing.
So we can try and have it before you at the next meeting.
Okay, thank you very much. Moving on to second public comment. There isn't any. So if you're ready, we'll skip ahead to agenda review for the upcoming meeting.
Well, we now know we'll add a policy discussion there. I'm glad I got you laughing after my big speech earlier. I got text from home saying, "Stop being so heavy, Dad."
Oh, they're watching it.
They're paying attention.
Yeah.
They are paying attention.
They told me I need a haircut too, a different topic.
Do you not subscribe? Do you not have Netflix at home? Your family has to watch this.
So I got to find the agenda, get back. Sorry, dare I waste your time. So we'll add this policy comment. I mean, it's intentionally given, it's right before the break, it's a little lighter meeting. We did remove until these January budget workshops, Maureen, that's what we agreed to do, not come back with those. So you can do some thinking, maybe communicate through the officers if you want, but I think you deserve a lighter meeting on the 20th. But go ahead, Maureen.
Yeah, the one thing, I was discussing it today, I mean, I think it may be good for us, if not the 20th, but in the beginning of January.
The 10th?
Like, just to have a discussion around class sizes, because as.
That was one of the two items the board
Yes.
wanted here on, it was SPED 101 and then class size.
And the reason that one would be, it would be good to kind of start that discussion earlier. A lot of, right now, as the principals are going through their information and trying to come up with what we believe the sections should be or you're recommending for next year, some of it is learned, like even today, I was told a few people to quite some time and they were like, well, it's this number that I should use. But those implications are huge. Like you're either like status quo, increase teachers or you need to increase 5 teachers. And I think what tends to happen as much as the board wants the recommendation, and maybe there just doesn't have some, I'm not saying decision-making meetings, but at least to start talking about it, because they really can't create a budget request without knowing. It's just become like a thing.
Specific thing you're looking for from us would be recommendation
Or
on?
just some like discussion or like some kind of something that would signal like this, that these are, even if it's like, as an example, the thinking around like in the upcoming year, are we trying to hold on to some maybe more preferable class sizes, or are we thinking we should third
one thing
grade
I
where we've had like 19 or 20, or are we looking to go to 25? I mean, we are at a lot of custom numbers for next year, so it just kind of fits into like, you're trying to create a proposal, but yet there's a lot of concern around if they start making those recommendations, we may have to trim elsewhere, and then we're creating a budget that becomes like problematic according to.
I asked the question at one of the last budget discussions about what were ideal class sizes from what his research shows, so I feel like I can't actually answer if they present, I want to have 20 kids. I don't have an answer for that without the background. I'm not an expert in that, I don't know, so I can't answer
That discussion has to happen before.
But that would require you guys to do the
So-
work. I don't know if you have time to do the work before the 20.
Well, maybe even the beginning of January.
We
I'm
put
just
in the
thinking
cart
out
before
loud
the horse.
Prior to the budget being finalized possibly.
Doreen, what do you mean by ideal class
Like,
size?
you know-
Isn't there a natural just trade-off between 5-to-1 classrooms and 35-to-1. It's just, it's one of the
But there might be
values.
like what's the tipping point? Like, the ideal is to have 10 students and 3 teachers or whatever, like that's the best situation for any teaching. The worst situation is to have, like it was in the turn of the century, where you have 50 kids in a classroom and 1 teacher.
Well, at
Or-
college, it was 500 to
Right,
1.
but that's different because it's election.
Well, it's
Yeah,
1 year above our
afterwards.
18-year-olds.
Right.
My first classes were 500 to 1.
So I guess my question is, I can't answer the question, if they're like, there's gonna be 23 kids in the class, so we're gonna have to open up another one. Well, is 24 really that bad? I don't know, maybe it is, maybe it's
I
terrible.
understand. Thank you.
Like,
I think in our third and fourth grade, we're looking at either like going forward the 19 or 20 or like a 24.
Right.
Because that's kind of with our marks, like one teacher swings it. And I think the last few years where we've tried around the pandemic to try to keep these class sizes, they look like where we use some grant funding, quite frankly, to kind of keep things in that around that 20 range. If we were to keep that, we're looking at potentially like a need to increase some. I'm just saying, so I think only because it came up today and it was,
So-
they didn't know what to propose or how to, because it does have a lot of staff implications.
Yeah, so I know we've jumped in talking about class size, but as you know, with budget, there is some increase going somewhere. That's why we have to think of how we can accommodate the increase. So I would love to know, before we start finding the solution, I want to understand how is this new need happening that is requiring for us to now trim things. And I would rather we start, again, I personally have a problem when we start touching the kids. I personally have an issue with it because I feel like this is a public school and it has to be laser focused on kids program, academia. We just did the portrait of the Hastings learner. And I wouldn't like that the first option is classroom size, things that like Doreen said, parents are concerned about the education of their kids. And it looks like we jump into those things first that is impacting them. And then there's that unfortunate, again, these are backyard conversations that I have personally heard that puts parents at an awkward position of what valuing the school need versus the community need. It's just this uncomfortable, I will just say it as I see it, mind game that happens, and it gets uncomfortable. So we've seen letters of parents not wanting to hear class size and all those things. So I feel like, if we jump straight to that and we start having a conversation, I know that Doreen had mentioned about the high school. It was just a casual conversation, and we were having the meeting here, you remember? And very well. Yeah, and all she said was that if what do you call it? The high schoolers, like when teachers retire, probably we can accommodate class size with the high school. And it became all of a sudden something that committee members, some, not all of them, misinterpreted, and it was coming back at us to bite us. So, and only because the whole conversation was not listened to. It was just someone said, oh, they are going to increase class size with high school. Oh, a high school matter. And then it just loses. So I would urge, this is not even for us. I'm asking the community that we all are in this together. We are community members. When it comes to the budget, let's be solution-oriented, bring suggestions. Don't say we don't want this, because it just puts all of us at a fix, you know what I mean?
I'm thinking more about, instead of getting so into the weeds, like we just have a discussion about historical class sizes and look at what we're projecting, and not necessarily get into the weeds of what the budget, but just have like I think maybe have the leadership or Melissa and Bill just speak to, some of the where what their recommendation would be, what the pros and cons of different things are. Because I think when it gets embedded into a budget conversation,
It becomes crazy. Got it.
It's like, say you just had it, and because quite frankly, I'm not suggesting that we're like a budget deficit, I'm just saying that may impact some of the thinking around other things, possibly. Not so much as that we're like, we're gonna have to cut things. It's just helpful because I think, let's face it, it is something that is a topic, and I think because of our relatively small enrollment numbers, one or two teachers here or there do have in some good potential have what some people view as a significant impact in the class section. That's all.
When are we talking about having
That's
Well,
there has to be.
we have to be careful not to have the discussion here, it's not a posted item. So I think Maureen's raising a good point. There'd been the question before, coming out of the budget workshops, help us understand class size, help us understand special ed. Why don't you have Maureen, Melissa, and I do some thinking on whether for the 20th we can come in
Can I
with some
just-
guidance, but you're not going to be here on the 20th,
That's
so
right.
I
And
think,
do want, if we have that discussion.
no,
I'd
this
like
is
to
too
be
big a
present.
question not, I think maybe we
I
then
won't
have
be
it
here
on the 10th.
Right.
Is that all right? Is that fine, January
I'm
10th?
just like snowballing here, I just was thinking.
Yeah, so
prior to getting to the
Yeah, I would recommend, because the 20th is almost here, and we want to be thoughtful on that. There's some significant prep work still going on with the portrait work. If the 10th is soon enough, Maureen, I think we,
January 10th, yeah.
Oh, 10th of January.
yeah, not next week. All right, if it's all right with you, because we've got a budget work session listed there anyway for the 10th.
Okay,
So we'll pick that up. Okay.
okay, excellent. Thank
All
you very
right.
much.
No, it's all good.
Okay. Are there any additional Board of Education comments? No? Is there a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? So moved.
Well, earlier today, where it was noticed, one of the board members is in Colorado, and their address in Colorado was part of the notification, and the public was invited to attend. I think I've heard a story, that gets sort of those legends around my law firm, that a member of the public did at one point go to a board member's, they were vacationing in the same spot or something like that, and they went there. So that is and does happen, and has happened under the existing general municipal law. What I think, though, there is a concern by the board about section 103A, and that's from numeral 2. To be quite clear, that provision sunsets at the end of 2024. So that it's likely, well, I don't know, I want to say it's likely, I don't really know, but it expires and is deemed repealed on July 1st, 2024, unless there's further action by the legislature.
Doug, can I paraphrase something and you tell me if it's not? I thought some of our concerns as trustees were we didn't want to be inadvertently opening the door to a less public transparency. As Doreen said, if I'm on vacation in Colorado, it is open to the public, but it's not accessible. It's a very expensive proposition. Am I right that some of the concerns of this board was we wanted to make sure it was New York State that had opened this door to a difficult, unlikely situation and not our own actions in rewriting the policy? Because if it's New York State that's opened it, I'm very okay with it hasn't happened. Is that what some of it was, or am I not getting it?
Yeah, so as Suzanne just said, 1A has been written this way for as long as I've been on the board. It's just that pre-COVID, nobody had predisposition and access to it, so all of a sudden this becomes a much more doable thing. Now, the reality is, what is the timing? Let me say here, is this what appropriate public notice? Is that 48 hours and 72 hours? 48?
So it depends. Oh, go ahead, you can go, Melissa, yeah. No, okay, sorry, I'm hearing myself. So it depends upon how long in advance your meeting has been scheduled. So if a meeting's been scheduled a week in advance, I believe it's 72 hours. For meetings that are scheduled on a tighter timeframe, we're to give notice as soon as practical.
So it should be 72 because ours are already scheduled.
Right, so it should be 72.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, I sort of think about just back all the dots. The idea that a quorum of the board will give a 72-hour advance notice that can be somewhere publicly is probably a little likelihood. And if you don't have 72 hours, we can call foul on it and say your vote doesn't count at this meeting because feel free to show up because you haven't publicly noticed it. Your vote won't count. Is that accurate?
That is accurate and I hate continuing to make this distinction over and over, but I got to, which is, that is accurate under Roman numeral 1.
Yes, exactly. Not under the second.
Correct.
And Roman numeral 2 is the one that expires potentially in July 2024.
Yes, and Roman numeral 2, the main differences are board members who are participating remotely do not have to notice their location. You do, however, need a quorum in a physical location. Okay? And there's one more thing, the third thing. Sorry, notice, quorum. Oh, and it has to be for extraordinary circumstance. Thank you. Yep.
So the thing is, Susan, it sounds like, not to complicate matters, but 1 and 2 can't actually be combined.
Can't actually be.
Number 2, in order for number 2, it says that you need to have a quorum in the same physical space.
Right.
So you couldn't be a part of that number 2 if in fact there were 4 or 5 people who wanted to video conference in locations open to the public.
That's right.
If number 1 is happening, then number 2 cannot happen.
Well, so put the other way, if you are operating under numeral 1, you are giving your notice of your location. So then you're operating, and you're giving advance notice, you're giving your 72 hours
Right,
notice.
and I'm saying if 4 people operate under number 1, which means they're in 4 different places, but they're open to the public, then based on the wording in number 2, 5th, 6th, and 7th person could not participate via video conference without telling the public where their location is, because the only way to do that is if there's a quorum in person.
I believe so, yes. I'm having trouble with the question only because the board's either going to adopt video conferencing under Roman numeral 2 or not. The board has to take action to adopt that. The board does not have to take action to adopt Roman numeral 1. That's consistent with applicable law.
Right, I guess, but in order for number 2 to happen, I don't want to belabor the point.
No, that's okay.
In order for number 2 to happen, you need to have a quorum in person.
Yes.
So if you have 4 people who decide to do number 1, which is video conference and location open to the public, does that mean in person together? 4 people in person together is what you need for number 2, correct?
You need 4, in a 7-person board, you need 4 people
In person.
in person.
Does that mean together? Or they could be 4 people in video conferencing locations that are open to the public?
Give me 1 second. I have it on. I have this exact example somewhere.
You guys know what I mean?
Noreen, 2C is written.
I think, Noreen, what you're saying is if 4 people
Yes.
are on vacation and are
Yep.
using 1A, and then one of the 5th, 6th, or 7th want to utilize 2A, it's not possible whenever 4 people are already on vacation.
Right, that's my question.
And that person would have the choice to either share a location and make it public, or not participating.
Right. That's what it seems.
It does seem that, yes, if 4 people are, we're doing another Labor Day weekend meeting where we're trying to appoint substitute teachers or new hires, and 4 people are calling in from vacation, the option for 2A doesn't exist.
Right.
But the option for joining as 1A would, since very few people travel publicly anyway, right?
Can I give you my example? I have it written down. It's for a 5-person board, but I think it's the same question. A 5-person board may conduct a public meeting where 2 members attend from the lecture room and 1 member attends from video conferencing at a location that was noticed and open to the public. In that event, the 2 remaining board members, if you adopt Roman numeral 2, those 2 remaining board members could attend by video conference from locations that are not open to the public as long as it's for an extraordinary circumstance. So, you can keep a quorum under Roman numeral 1 with 4 board members participating from 4 different locations as long as those locations are open to the public.
So that's not what it says in 2C.
Right, because that's 2. In 1, you could do it. In 2,
But Suzanne, what you're saying though is that there was no quorum or physical location, that example, yet still 2 people are able to attend under condition 2.
because the quorum is made.
Right.
Let me say it a different way. In 2C, you'll see the second sentence. A physical location is any location identified in the meeting notice that is open to in-person public attendance. So if we have some combination, like we just talked about, some board members are participating and giving their location, and you've got 2 board members in the lecture room. Let's do a real life example. You've got,
It says in C, in the first sentence, it says, must be present in this, a quorum must be present in the same physical location.
where the public can attend the meeting. A physical location is any location identified in the meeting notice that is open to in-person public attendance.
Right, but that's not a quorum in the same physical location. If I'm in my house, because in this house, Cecilia's at her house, and Maureen's at her house, we're all opening this to the public. And Jeremy could not attend if he's on vacation and doesn't want to open his place because we don't have 4 people in the same location.
If you took the word same out, it would be
Yeah.
the same thing you was talking about.
Yes.
Quorum of board members must be present in a physical location where the public can attend.
Right.
Physical, it's the word same there.
It's confusing there. Yeah, it's confusing with the second provision, for sure.
So can we take the word same out?
This is NISBA's policy, by the way. Yeah, give me 1 second. I'm going to pull up the original to make sure that there isn't some kind of typographical error first.
I realize this will probably never happen, but I do feel like since it's policy, we have to make sure that. Right.
Yeah, we don't know what's going to happen.
Right. There might be a hologram or something.
Did I just hear that?
Do we have a hologram policy?
Yeah, like, wait. Oh my gosh. So yes, that is NISBA's policy language that has that confusion there with same and then the definition of physical location. So give me 1 more moment. I'm going to pull up the guidance from the Committee on Local Government and make sure that that's not inconsistent. Okay, I've got an FAQ here, which confirms yes, that confirms. We can take out that same. We can take that out. So we can say, so 2C can read, oh, I lost my screen. 2C can read, to utilize video conferencing under extraordinary circumstances, a quorum of board members must be present in a physical location where the public can attend the meeting. A physical location is any location identified in the meeting notice that is open to in-person public attendance.
That makes sense.
Yeah, right now I'm looking at, there's a New York State Committee on Open Government Q&A document, and one of the questions is exactly this question, which is which members of the public body may count toward a quorum. So it's answering that exactly the same way.
So is that what we wanted?
I can answer that question. It's up to you guys.
Have to go back to this. We put it somewhere three times. So, I mean, I'm okay personally with this as this way. This, you know, 1A essentially has to be adopted in this way. Is this kind of representative of what public officers law 104 is? Officers law.
More or less.
Yeah. So it doesn't look like, I mean, this is state ed law, so while we might be in our policies, it's state ed law, so there's not much we can do about that. I guess state ed law may change someday, it's because of this policy. For reasons that whoever wrote it years ago never thought it would be. But I'm personally okay with passing this as long as we make a note that the word same comes out of 2C.
Anyone else have any thoughts, comments? Any other thoughts about any of the other meetings, Suzanne, or any of the other ones? 2310, regular meetings.
I think those were all picked up. It's almost like, this is all connected.
Got it, right. So, are we done with Suzanne? Anybody have any other questions? Got it.
Yeah,
Okay, so should we vote on the second read first? Yeah, the first read, okay. So regarding second read, policies 2325, 2310, 2340, and 2360. Do I have a motion to approve? So moved. A second? All in favor? Great. Okay. Then moving on to the first read of policy number 5152, admission and tuition of non-resident students.
Can you just advise us where those changes came from? Is the recommended changes? Is this, where did the recommended change
I don't
come?
Yes.
Yes, Suzanne, you can speak to that.
Okay, give me a second. So we're talking about 5152, is that correct?
Right, and the question was, did the changes
Sure.
come, because the state is requiring, why are we making the changes to this policy?
Okay. So a number of, I'm just pulling up the memorandum that I wrote. to the policy committee, because I don't want to be consistent with my previous comments, so just give me 1 second. Okay, so yes, so as part of our original audit, policy audit that school boards did for us, this is going back a few years now, as a part of that audit process, school boards did advise that existing policy 5152 should be updated or expanded and provided in sample for the board's consideration. With regard to the admission of non-resident students, school boards advised school districts are not required to admit non-resident students. They may accept non-resident students on terms prescribed by the board. The board should be aware, it goes on a little bit, and that the board is going to permit non-residents to attend. It must do so via policy. It goes on to advise us, and again, this is from NISBA, advising that if it decides to admit non-resident students, the admission criteria must be applied uniformly. The district may not discriminate on the basis of any protected category. It can use, it can use criteria, but those criteria must be applied uniformly and cannot discriminate. If the district wants to continue its practice of accepting non-resident students, I went ahead and revised 5152 in accordance with the NISBA sample policy. Some items from existing 5152 were removed or placed under headings just for clarity. And then finally, we've got the portion of policy 5152 which relates to tuition-free admission of children of district employees. That is not something highlighted by school boards, but that is a relatively unique provision. Some districts have it, some districts don't. And I understand that was something that was under consideration or something for me to provide some background on.
So remind me, Suzanne, did you put in the text about children of non-resident employees? I don't remember it being there when we read it last time. I know we discussed it, I don't remember it in the policy.
In the policy, it was always in the policy.
Sorry.
Yes, speaking on that one, and not speaking about, when it came in, I think there is reason to reconsider that policy. And as it affects staff, not just teachers and their children, I think any reconsideration of that policy is challenging for anybody whose children are already in our schools. And that would lead to a lot of consideration of would it be only applicable, in the future. Anybody who has a first grader in the district and has made decisions on that basis, it would certainly be an easier way to modify it, to make no changes to existing children of non-resident employees. But I would speak, openly that I don't see a benefit to that policy enough to attract staff. I think our district attracts staff in exceptional numbers, and I think that sort of policy is something that we should note is out of line with all of our peer districts. It is not in Dobbs Ferry, Irvington, or Ardsley, and it's in very few districts where they even take in a little bit of money from staff or employees. So that is a policy that catches my eye, but I wouldn't want to make any changes that affect staff that are currently employed by our district.
So the reason I thought that this was not here, because we distinctly had that conversation at the policy meeting, and I thought we had said that if we wanted to make a change to something that doesn't for the union because it was common practice. Yes, so you have
Not common, though. Past practice, but not common at all.
So you would have to go before the union to discuss it. There is also the option, Jeremy will discuss, that you could have teachers or other staff
allow their children to come to Hastings but for a fee, the same way other people outside of the district would come for a fee. So there was a couple of conversations that we had around this. They come, they don't pay anything, or they don't pay the in, or they could come, but they could pay either what we charge any other person, or they can have a different rate based on the position that they have within the school district. So if we, Suzanne, if we want to discuss that and take it out, but we have to have an individual discussion now about this, right? Because we can't move to second reading.
Yeah, and I think just from my vantage point, as we work on this in a couple of policy meetings, my understanding was at this point was we had to make corrections in this, as Suzanne's identified. But that's a quite significant conversation to have regarding staff, children, and benefits here. And past practice, as Suzanne talked about, would become a factor here from this then likely become a negotiating piece. So the thought was that we're wanting to wrap this thing, I think that it is quite a significant issue for a good number of staff and employees.
Remind me, Maureen, again, how many staff was we talking about this? 20? 20 kids, I thought it was? Yeah.
Across your four bar.
You have to add. I'm just clarifying. Not very.
Does
Free? Tuition free?
It was a time that they got recommended. It was something I think was, I don't know. It wasn't for everyone. We had but I think it is in there. Yeah, it is not possible, not impossible. So whether they did it in grandfather people, it's not, at least not true for the first one. There was a change to the word. But that was, I think, standard line.
And I'm just having a little trouble hearing, I'm sorry. Yeah, and I apologize because I'm not necessarily I don't have my materials in front of me, excuse me, but yes, Maureen, any change to the practice would need to, I guess, become, any practice would in fact be a past practice. So any change to that practice, including a grandfathering, would constitute a change that would have to then be bargained with the unions.
Can I ask a question about what is the line drawn for past practice? If we make a decision tonight, and the next meeting, does that become past practice? And what is the rule of thumb?
I'm having such a hard time, I'm sorry, guys.
Is it, I think the question was, not just to clarify, if the board were to decide to change the policy, would it then still, for new people who may want to send their children there, would that still need to be negotiated through the contract with the community themselves? That's true, right?
Negotiated with the individuals themselves?
So even if they change the policy, would that be sufficient for, like, a year from now, if a staff member wanted to send their child here, it wouldn't matter if the policy were changed, right? It would still need to be negotiated, correct?
Right. No, the policy change itself itself, if you did it without first negotiating, could subject the district to improper practice charges from the particular bargaining units. Because you're changing, because by policy, you are changing a past practice that's a material benefit of employment without first negotiating.
And that would be even if it's only applied to future hires as well.
It's changing the basis of the arrangement.
Right, yes. You might have, I don't want to speak for the position of the particular unions, but a grandfathering might be a middle way, but whether you abolish the practice completely or grandfather a change that you make to this policy, this portion of the policy, excuse me, because it is a material benefit, if we don't do it, if we don't negotiate with the unions first, could result in improper practice charge, grievance, other kinds of litigation and action.
Yes, I didn't quite pick up on that, the middle part of that. Is there a difference if it's grandfather? Yeah, that's mine, sorry. Is there a difference if it's, grandfathered and only applies to future hires, or there's no difference?
No, in terms of whether you need to negotiate it first?
Yeah.
Is that the question? Yeah, no difference. I'm just saying you may have an easier time with it because it's kind of a middle path, but I don't know.
But, well, let me clarify what you said. In your memo, which we can pull, anything in the future, you probably should attach your memos to these reads, if we can do that, for any of these reads, because Suzanne puts together very detailed memos for possible receipts. But in your memo, you were quite clear citing case law that as a past practice, this would be subject to negotiation, any change to the arrangement.
Yeah.
So then what I think you're saying is, anyway, any change to the arrangement, you would have to first go into a collective bargaining arrangement with four units on this.
Right.
And as Suzanne cited in the memo, there's at least two examples in the case law.
So if we change this policy, the next time contracts came up, that would be the negotiation.
You'd have to negotiate before you change the policy.
So you can't even change this policy without negotiating?
That's the guidance from, I'm speaking through Suzanne, she's
Yeah.
correct, but that's
Yeah,
the guidance.
Or you risk improper practice charges, grievances, actions by the union which could be successful.
But Suzanne, how do you negotiate something that's not written down in the contract?
It's a past practice. I know it sounds very black and white, but as a past practice, it would need to, a position that would need to be negotiated before it's
The
changed.
challenge with reissuing it and sort of giving it a fresh date, right, implies that we are creating it when we're actually our hands are tied on the majorities, right? So the item that has the most discussion, we really have no way to look, we have to keep it. But refreshing the date to say we looked at it and reissuing it implies that we had some control and we don't. That's my objection to that. Just for the sake of rubber stamping it without any input, that's really not going to do it.
You mean the policy?
The policy, because we're saying we're looking at it, and we had a lot of discussion on it, but we have no control to change anything.
Well, we have control to change it if we go to the bargaining units and change. First, we have to go to the bargaining units and assuming that they were amenable to the change, then we would go back to the policy. So we would have to put this on hold anyway.
Well, but Suzanne, can you correct us? I think the whole rate, there were necessary corrections to this, even with that language in it.
Yes.
This one, we've had the language, as I understand it, for non-residents, employee and non-employee. So this policy needs updating as it exists.
Correct.
Discussion came up, okay, do we provide an opportunity at no charge for employees, non-resident and children? I guess you can give the board guidance. Are they able to table this policy and make no change? I thought they could. There need to be some updates in a later they consider this employee-to-employee relationship?
I think so, or, you know, the other way to do it is to make no changes to that particular portion and do a second read on the other changes, and then go back and open it up. There's two ways to do it. So you can split now and bring the whole policy up for revision once you've had a chance to make a determination regarding the that specific piece related to employees. And then we could do it in two pieces, I guess.
Well, a couple of questions. First of all, there was no changes to the highlighted yellow, right? Except for maybe set forth above, so that hasn't been touched. If, to Maureen's point, there's concern that it's been looked at, is it possible to just call that, maybe it's just said this, call that out, separate it, make it a separate policy, show that it's not, you know, this references back to policy 5152. That way when it shows an update, you're showing an update of this yellow was moved to policy 5153 for lack of a better number. And policy 5152 was, I guess it would still be, it would still be showing that 5153 in this case was established on December 20th, 2022. So it runs into the same challenge.
Yeah, I think what you're saying, I wouldn't necessarily advise that approach, although I hear what you're saying about sort of cutting it out and putting it somewhere else. But I'm looking at the rest of the changes that are in there, and I'm trying to make a quick decision as to whether or not I think they could wait. Do you know what I'm saying? Like that they could wait. I think that they could wait until there's a decision, and then you could, you know, revise the whole policy at once. I think it would be okay.
Okay, so let me try and clarify for the board, Suzanne. Is there a legal necessity to change this policy that currently exists now?
I'm trying to make that decision very quickly. I think the answer is no, though.
So if there is not, I would urge the board to table this until you can have a larger employment relationship conversation. Because while currently there are only 20 employees affected, there's a long history in Hastings of providing this opportunity. And I think it's quite a significant employment relationship moment. And I would hate to have the board back into that discussion thinking there's a legal necessity to change this policy. If there's no legal necessity, I would suggest this policy stay as is, and then the board determine when, if and when it wants to have this discussion about this employment relationship across 4 bargaining units.
And if we decide that we want to have a discussion, though, we just decide to put it on the agenda.
You could. It may fall under collective bargaining discussion, and so that may give you some ability, depending on where we're at in the conversation. But this is one, people are already paying attention to this conversation in the organization. They know what you now are thinking about this. So I think that your next conversation probably needs to be fairly explicit.
And I will make a point that I think there's an important protocol analysis that has to go on with regards to this. You know, one could argue that if you look at the numbers, the actual financial impact, it can ebb and flow over time, depending on who's taking advantage of it. But there's a world in which this has very little financial impact. If you're not increasing class size, if you're not having a real material change in the cost of the districts, so you're providing a very valuable and appreciated opportunity for not a lot of extra money. I know we looked at that in the past, like years ago, we had those conversations. I can't remember the specific numbers, but I feel like at times it comes out as not as heavy of a financial burden. So I just think it's a really thoughtful conversation because it is valuable and appreciated by a lot of employees that really think through that.
Yeah, we did a lot of that analysis of the policy and changes whether to bring it here, because we definitely see the pros and the cons, right? Like we had these discussions. seems like we should table this discussion. It seems like there's enough members of the board who would like to go further with this conversation. So we'll table the policy. Right now, we will not move to second read, and we will figure out how we can, the right method of having this conversation. Whether it's executive session or whether it's a public board meeting, however that works. Okay? All right, thanks. Okay, so I think we're done with Suzanne. Okay.
I can hang out, but if you guys are happy to sign off.
I think we're done with the policy section. I think that's
Okay.
all.
Okay, thanks everybody, good to see you, and if I don't see you, have a great New Year, happy holidays.
Thank you, Suzanne. Take
Bye-bye.
care.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to move on to business 7B, which are, sorry, the placement and or services.
7A.
Oh, sorry, 7A, business items, yes. So business items 1 through 7, does any board member have any questions?
I just lost connection. Is this one of the solar on there?
Yes.
I have a question on that. The license that we're referencing, something that was signed on
See the name?
July 14th. It's actually March 14th, and that was this is March. Oh, okay. Is it possible to show that, or is it that? Yes, exactly. Okay. So this is a lease for the solar panels, yes?
Correct, yeah, all of it. So, just to remind people, this has been, the idea of having solar buildings, is happening in Jersey, whether they're different conditions of the project, maybe on our own, the financing, even need to, purchase necessary power, for us, we were not able to finance this work where it would be, positive financial costs, and this opportunity to us through some folks in the village that we're working with this company. And the idea is that they lease space and are generating the power to the actual grid that can be then also provided to the residents here at a less expensive cost. In addition to that, provide revenue to the district. So what we see today is end of this process, which is delivering peer review, multiple, probably, in addition to both our attorneys not being involved in negotiation with the company and the client for this to do the agreement. Unfortunately, the size of the project, based on the space that we also need for some of our different utilities, our rooftops, some of the scope, but I think we kind of make a good place where it does provide $40,000 to serve the district this year, for us to help this liability maintenance of the solar panels, and then also provides, we are also in the purchase, so that energy, the school district, so it is a cheap way for us to purchase that, so also, and then it also benefits. So, we're happy with
So it's for 10 years, right?
yes.
And it's
locally, so school districts were not allowed to purchase leases for longer than that, that was a law. It's all part of this agreement, this negotiation, because it's legally only referred to, is there no longer than that, and that's substantially, company was not, that's not really $100,000 years. I think that also really why some of the, have the sign longer, right, also not yet.
And the fee that they reference, is, do you know, the fee is to the company? The fee to the company? It mentions a fee.
Yeah, we're not paying.
We don't pay for that? Okay. And
There's
who does the
a
install? Who do the install? Who pays for the project itself to get the panels installed? They pay all the
Yeah, so it's
installation?
almost like we're just building something on our property.
So we're just giving them basically permission to use our property.
Well, we still have to go through the whole permitting process, which even in terms of the architectural engineering, and we, basically, our architects, and we actually chose to work with, both Darrell and then anything that speaks to being access to the panels, or we're not here, we have to have some copyright. And this is, like I said, it's one of these, those are like, we don't, we just allow, we didn't have to be more specific. But, you know, this was the best financial option. Yeah, I don't know if it was, and a lot of different angles, right? Roll out,
And I don't know if you said this before, but to be clear, if I remember correctly, buildings, our buildings get the first use of the solar, and then the village gets, any excess the village gets. Then it goes out to private Westchester.
We'll have access to purchase it.
Yeah.
By our, depending on what, you know, depending on. So I mean, interestingly, like, school districts have to buy our, we get a different for watt hour price. I mean, kind of still involved in, transfer to the solar, Rochester, but in terms of the energy generated, we pay much lower cost. So it's interesting, you know, that's why solar is very much of the financing works better. You know, environmental, or like any other deal, you know, where we were like breaking and stuff. But yeah, we think this is also, this company has one, that is a market and market. Some level of, although not, no, you're not having some money that would
And do we get a sense of the market, like before we enter into this particular company, do we have kind of a competition or?
yes, so there's not a lot of different folks that do this, but there are some people who look at it and they feel like doing this kind of work. Well, we have, like I said, it's actually being worked on with 2 words or whatever, we've done, we have a contract with the marketer who's going to back the ad.
Any other questions on any other business items?
Yeah, the same one, and I definitely wanted to put it in context. I mean, there were 2 reasons why we were excited when Maureen brought us, you know, this concept or proposition. One was to support, you know, a clean energy solar panel. The other one was possibly to bring in, you know, a revenue source. So if you know, one of those is 110 pages long, so it's obviously a contract that I haven't read at all. Is there any summary? Is there a hard number that is in there that we can share with residents?
It's about 40,000 a year. Yeah, one is at 25,000. It's not dependent, a lot of these agreements depend on some of people what they want to only be generated. So,
Yeah.
you know, and that, you know, because it's need to, there's a lot of things that impact, you know, generate. This one kind of seems to be in the negotiations with, you know, our attorneys that we work with this market network. So, like I said, we know that this particular lot is, you know, has interest and, return.
Yeah, thank you for finding it, bringing it to us, and continuing to work on it.
moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Moving on to business item B. The placement and/or services for CSE and CPSE. Do I have a motion to approve placement services?
So moved.
Second? All in favor? About appointments 1 through 5?
Looks like we might do it as a consent
Yeah,
agenda,
that's what I was,
A, B, and C.
can I do one A, B, and C together? Does anybody have any questions about A, B, and C together? Okay. Do I have a motion to approve items 8, A, B, and C referencing personnel?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Okay, thank you. Moving on to item number 9, minutes. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes from the BOE meeting on December 6th, 2022? Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Okay. Moving on to second public comment. We don't have any public here. Agenda review, item number 11. Are there any comments on the item review? Do we have anything new you wanted to bring up?
Well, we'll be into the new year, 2023, and tonight's a light meeting. The meetings will pick up intensity with some of the topics pretty much right when we get back. The topics are pretty clear, so I don't know if there are questions about any of that, but we also will be nearing budget season, which will keep you busy.
Exciting. We don't have to approve this, though.
No, it's a point of information, and I think been a useful way for you all to check in on the plan.
Great. Okay. Do I have any Board of Ed comments?
I will make a comment, just an observation. So I had my daughter home for Thanksgiving briefly, and she's home now for the holidays, right? And she's getting together with all her friends, and they've been commenting about how they missed Hastings and they had such a good high school experience. And then just coming out of finals, how they feel they were prepped really well for kind of being students in a higher university. So I just wanted to give props to the school, particularly the teachers, right, for all that preparation. I think it's the best testament to get it from the recent graduates. So thank you, and happy holidays to all.
That's great. Always great to hear. I just have one comment. I know it was in Bill's notes, but as the parents of an 8th grader, I want to point out how amazing the concert was last week, with the chorus, the band, the orchestra, and now the reformed jazz band. I guess the jazz band was off for a few years or so, but now it's reformed. It was an amazing concert, so thank you for the music department, as always, for putting on such an amazing show. And I know the high school has their concert, I believe, on Thursday. Yeah. Great.
I would add a short comment. I definitely support the way we've been putting certain comments just into the record, and in this one, the superintendent's comments, one thing I did want to, read from Bill's write-up that's on the record. We did have we wanted to highlight our partnership with the Hastings Education Foundation, and of course, that's always an opportunity to speak about all the ways that we have community members volunteering through our PTSA, through our Boosters Club, through our HEF Foundation, even most recently, it seems our local police department supporting our talent show. So it is of note, it's in our record, but it's definitely, our community is driven by our volunteer participation and our commitment to this school district in a lot of ways. So we do appreciate that, and thank you for putting it in the record, Bill.
And actually, Jeremy, I appreciate you raising that up, because HEF asked if there could be a way to, and they came up with this lovely statement in italics, so I really appreciate you raising that up.
You might say it takes a village. Okay, this is my last night, folks. Okay.
You've on the road after this. You're trying us out.
Exactly.
There's only one thing I wanted to say, and I forgot to mention it during the business items. I just wanted to express appreciation to the Joel Dean Foundation for the contribution that they made towards scholarships for iteration staff that they are, and so much for our students to keep this a well-oiled machine. I express my gratitude to them and to members of the community beyond the advocacy of the campus. So thank you, and thank you to those who are joining this table and well beyond it.
Thank you.
Thanks. Agree. Happy holidays to everybody. Okay, is there a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. All in favor? Okay, great. The meeting is adjourned.